Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this additional meeting of the Environment and Performance Committee. My name is Councillor Claire Rylott, and I'm the chairman of this committee. My vice chairman is Councillor Lena Savitkian. Before we move to the agenda this evening, our housekeeping rules are as follows. Restroom facilities are available on this floor for the ladies and down the main stairwell for the gentlemen. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, officers will escort all attendees to the nearest safety point. May I please ask that all persons addressing this meeting do so clearly through the microphone system at all time. I would at this point remind all persons in attendance that this meeting is being streamed live. Please be advised that abuse or intimidation of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who is deemed to breach this requirement will be warned and asked to refrain, and if the behaviour persists, they will be asked to leave the meeting. That concludes the housekeeping rules, and we will now move straight into part one of this evening's agenda and address the preliminary items. Before we move into part one of the agenda, I would just confirm for public information that the initial agenda published included Councillor Pierpoint as a member of the committee. Councillor Pierpoint was officially replaced in September by Councillor Middleton, and the published agenda was amended to include Councillor Middleton as an official member as soon as the error was noticed. Moving on to receive apologies for absence and notification of any substitute members. Karen.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Alison Austin with Councillor Richard Austin substituting. Apologies from Councillor Mike Gilbert with Councillor Paul Gleeson substituting, and further apologies from Councillors Patsy Marson and Anton Danny. Thank you.
Item 2, to sign the minutes of the last meeting held on the 31st of October 2023. Do members agree the minutes, please? Item 3, to receive declarations of interest in respect of any item on the agenda. Does any member of this committee wish to declare any interest in any item on the agenda? There is a note in front of you all regarding the waste fees and charges. Item 4, to answer any written public questions. Are there any?
No questions, Chairman.
Thank you. That concludes the preliminary items. We will now move on to part 2 of tonight's agenda. Our first item of business this evening is the Waste Fees and Charges report on page 5 of the agenda, and this will be presented by the portfolio holder, Councillor Callum Butler, who is supported by our Assistant Director of Neighbourhoods, Victoria Burgess, and our Operations Manager, Matt Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for letting me bring this report to scrutiny tonight. As is the case across multiple services and trades, operating costs have increased significantly within the last 3 years. This is the same for our brown bin collection service. Unfortunately, the service is not currently meeting costs. This is in part due to the increase in diesel, labour, services and maintenance charges. I therefore bring forward the proposal to raise the fees from the current £45 to £50 a year. This rise will support the cost of the service and make it wash its face, and also means those who do not use the service are not subsidising it. It is worth noting that the increase would represent a collection fee of £2.50 per week. To add to this, should any residents have more than one brown bin, they will be charged £30 instead of £20 currently to have the extra bin emptied. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to answering your questions to the best of my ability. Thank you.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Middleton.
Thank you, Chairman. I've read this 2 or 3 times, and I can't see anywhere where it actually says what the cost of this service has been for the last 12 months, which I think is critical, as we want to know whether we're above it, below it. Do we need to put it up at all? Are we not putting it up enough?
Thank you, David. As I say, currently it's not washing its face, so we're currently losing, or it's costing the council an additional just about £3,000.
What is the cost, though? What was the cost for the last 12 months?
Have you got the figures, Vic?
So the
So on the in the report, it shows the income budget being £579,050, and it's costing us £3,000 a year more than that. So we're running at
So
what's
582,000.
yeah. And just to make a point about that is that that's the running cost now. We've now got the increased vehicle costs, we've got staffing costs. So what we're looking at is subsequent years now in terms of meeting the cost of running the service. As Councillor Butler said, so that the service is fully funded by those people that are using it, basically. Yeah.
So what are you forecasting the cost to be for the next 12 months?
So we've finance colleagues have worked with us on projecting forward when you look at what the current costs of vehicles are. So just to give you an example.
Just the number's fine.
Oh, okay.
I don't
Yeah.
need an
So
explanation.
in the report, it says 100,000. That's what we're looking at shortfall moving forward.
So it's going to cost 682,000.
Yeah. And just to continue that example, it just shows that vehicles used to be a couple of years ago about 180,000. They're now 235,000. So we're seeing that with parts, with everything that we're doing. So, I'm sure, all of us that have cars have seen that increase in running costs.
Thank you, Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you, Chair. I was on the borough when the brown bin were introduced, and at that stage I argued for it not being charged. However, at that stage I was convinced that obviously it is wrong for people who are not using the service to pay for other people to have the service. So I'm quite happy with the fact that the service has to wash its face. But Councillor Middleton has, to an extent, stolen what I was going to say on this. I do think when this report goes to Cabinet, it should have a more detailed breakdown of the cost of the service and the historic cost and how it's changing and the projected cost. Because I think Cabinet will have to assure itself that it is washing its face. Or equally, we're not trying to make a bit of money out of it. So, because whilst I accept we've been given some figures tonight, I think when Cabinet comes to look at it, they should really, be in a position where they can actually see the figures and have looked at the figures before they come to their decision. So I do think that's an element of the report that does need to be followed up. But the principle of it washing its face is fine. And I personally feel that £2.50 a collection is not an unreasonable or excessive amount of money. And if you look at the tables, we are not far out from what most districts are already charging, and I imagine those that are charging less than us won't be for much longer. So that it's all in the right ballpark. And I suppose my only other comment, if you look at the cost of that bin collection, it makes you realise how good value your council tax you pay for us for all your other bin collections. Because if the real cost of collecting a bin is £2.50, most people are paying only £90 a year for their council tax to us, because we only get half of it. So that's your bin collection's already covered that. So that does make the whole service put that into perspective. I think it's a very well run and a reasonable service overall. So I will happily support the recommendation for the increase, but with the caveat that the report to Cabinet does have more detailed figures. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Austin.
I'm basically in favour of the proposals as on the same grounds as Councillor Gleeson. The service should cover itself. The cost should be covered. But now, if you've got a small garden, there must be an awful temptation just to slip a bit now and then into your green or onto your general waste bin. Now, to what extent is this a problem? Is it increasing, or it is a related issue? Have you any comments on this to make?
Thanks, Councillor Austin. I think Matt will probably know more exactly than I do, but I'm not aware that there's a significant problem in that regard. But I'm sure Matt will jump in if he's aware.
Is he there?
I am. Hello. We don't have any figures in respect to that being a problem. What we do state in our frequently asked questions and terms and conditions when people are buying into this service is that people are permitted to share bins where it doesn't exceed one. So if my neighbour had a brown bin and I didn't, and I had a bag of garden waste, then it is perfectly reasonable for me to pop it in his bin if he's got capacity. But we haven't noticed a significant increase in that, and we don't have any figures to support it either way, really.
Can I ask a second question? Now I make a lot of garden compost myself, and I hope that we as a council encourage that for the sake of our carbon footprint, as well as cost saving to the householder. Now, are we going to be publicising composting in when we send out the council tax bill this year? Can we? I'm very keen that we do make the point that we as a council are very keen on increasing the amount of composting that's done. Any comments on that?
Thank you, Richard. It's certainly something that we can definitely look into, because I agree, yeah, it's, you know, with our net zero and whatnot agenda, then that's something that we can clearly look towards doing.
Thank you, Chair. Do we, or do you, sorry, have information about any proposed increases by the other councillors in your list? We're obviously not benchmarking officially against them, but most of them will probably be looking to increase their income if they haven't done so recently. Do you have any indication of what they might be going up to, in particular East Lindsey and South Holland? No, that's the current amount.
With regard to East Lindsey, it's not gone to the exec board yet. South Holland's only just, that hasn't gone either, no. If I can use other examples from other areas in the country that I've seen on just by sort of going on a Google search. I can't remember exact locations, but I know one council was doubling from £30 to £60. Another was going to go up to 68 from 50, I want to say. I think with us going up to 50, we'd be about average across the country. There are a few that are lower. There's a few that are going to charge for the first time, but I think this is in part down to new changes that are coming in from central government and the fact that they've been holding off, waiting for this decision, and the government's finally given this decision that they're not going to. At one point they were looking at subsidising bin collection, so a lot of councils held off charging. But now the government has actually confirmed that they're not going to subsidise it, so they're all. It's sort of like a starting pistol, and everybody's now started charging.
Okay, well, thank you for that. But obviously, we'll watch and see what the others are around us, particularly are charging, because we do look to be relatively cheap at the moment. But I support the moves to increase the charge, and I support the comments made by my colleagues. Another point, you have the total number of subscribers for last year at 11,897. What is the trend? Are more people signing up to this as time goes on, or is it falling? Or is it staying exactly the same? And what this 11,008, whatever, what's that as a percentage of the total collections you actually make of the other coloured bins? Is it a third? Less than a third? I don't know.
So yes, so on that, in terms of so your first question, the other councils are all also experiencing the same increases in costs. So as Councillor Butler said, we will see a general trend, I think, to councils recovering those costs. So I think the answer is probably yes, for particularly those that you've identified as well. So your second point was around the oh, sorry, it's gone out my head. So it was around the
Trajectory.
oh yes, sorry, we have, and the report identifies that we have a lot of new build in the borough, so we anticipate that we will get an increase in the number of customers to the service, and I think at the minute it kind of sits with the existing subscribers, it sits at a level, because I think you either want the service because you have a garden, or maybe you don't have transport to get to the household waste recycling centre. So it tends to sit quite level. But we are aware from, you know, as you all will be aware from the development that's going on, that we are starting to see an increase. We will be starting to see an increase as people move into those properties as well. And that's something that Matt's team will pick up as we move across. In terms of the 11,000 households that subscribe now, there is, I think, about 40,000 households in Boston, isn't it? 44,000 households. So we're looking at, I would suggest, just over a quarter, maybe a third of households that use the service. Yeah.
The reason I ask that is because in areas near the household waste site, a lot of the fly tipping that happens is of garden waste type material. We talked to the county council about their opening times and all the rest of it, which never seem to change or improve or whatever else. But Boston Borough obviously has to pick up the tab for fly tipped garden waste. And apart from the publicity you give this service in the mailings that go out to people and the other publicity that's around, which I commend, I wonder if you could talk, we could talk to Lincolnshire County Council in particular to get information at the household waste site to tell people that Boston does actually collect if you subscribe to the brown bin. More, in other words, trying to propose that we get more information out to more people.
Thank you. Councillor Middleton.
I'm a firm believer that this service should pay for itself. And as we're working on very, very fine margins, even with this new increase, the only threat I see to it is if we get a marked drop off of the uptake, people deciding they don't want to take it. I think that's something we should watch and look at very carefully, say for the first 3 months of next year, say from March to July or whatever. And if we do see a drop off that's going to hurt us, I think we probably have to review it again. I think it's something we should keep an eye on. I mean, if it goes the other way, wonderful. But if I say the only threat to it is if we get a marked drop off.
Thank you, David. We have factored in for a 5% reduction in the amount of people who sign up to it. So obviously, if it's a lot more than that, then it's something to look at, definitely, yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Drayton. Sorry, I missed you, sorry.
What about rolling out a 3 weekly collection? And that would cover the cost of doing it fortnightly. What do you think to that idea?
Sorry, do you mean 3 weekly collection of the garden waste?
Yeah, the garden waste. The brown bin.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, halfway through the summer, mine's only half full anyway, and I've got a fairly big garden. So,
I mean, we're having the opposite at the moment, where people are wanting to come to us and are not happy that the service is now finished for the year, because obviously we've had quite a mild autumn and the leaves are still falling and whatnot. But obviously we can only use what's been factored in, and there's contractual reasons why we can't extend it currently. But so I understand what you're saying about the summer, but then in the winter and in the early spring, when everything's growing and blooming, you know what the grass is like. When as soon as spring, appears, you soon fill in the bins. So I think there's no, we'd sort of try and go with a happy medium in the middle rather than weekly or free weekly.
Okay. Yep, fine.
Do we somehow advertise at all about brown bins, especially for Eastern European people? Do we have kind of survey who uses them most? Because obviously of growth population in Boston, yeah? Do we think about Eastern European? Do they know what to put in the brown bins? Is there any numbers at all? Who uses them the most?
So we don't have numbers that detailed. So we know where, from our routing, we know where people live that use it, but because we don't know who lives in those houses. But what we have done now for a few years and continue to do is make sure that all the information we put out is in pictorial form as well. So the last leaflet that went out and in I think it went out in council tax, yeah, in bills as well. There's pictures of what can go in each bin, and that is much more easy then for everyone to understand.
Do you think that the brown bin collection is being managed correctly? Are people abusing it? Are people using it when they haven't paid? Are we checking up on this? Past history, I know people have used it when they shouldn't be and they haven't paid.
So I think that's something that we need absolutely to keep monitoring. And the sticker that is sent out is one way of us. A second way of us making sure that the bins that the teams are emptying, the householder has paid, particularly where you may have a number of bins put out together. But I think the whole premise, isn't it, of the charging is that those people that use the service pay for it, and therefore if we know anything where either we have residents that are putting the bins out that haven't paid, then we would hope to get information on that, and certainly we'll use the crews on the ground. But yeah, we need to stop that happening, because that's unfair on everyone else that is paying. Yeah.
Councillor Gleeson.
I've got a few things. Following on from Councillor Austin's comments on composting, somewhere in the back of my mind, I seem to remember we as a council used to do cheap composting bins. Do we still? And is there a good take up or what?
So I think you're referring to a number of years ago. There's like a scheme across the county.
Yeah, I know we had a big green Dalek looking thing.
That's right. And yeah, and that isn't. We don't have that scheme anymore, like scheme anymore like it used to. But absolutely, the first thing we all should be looking at is waste reduction and reducing the amount that we put out to be dealt with. And of course, home composting is one good way of making sure that we kind of use what we've got and then put it back into the garden, and so use it as compost. But we can certainly have a look at. I shall raise that. We'll certainly have a look at what other schemes are.
It might be something in our waste reduction-y, greeny, credentially thing. Talking about the sort of collection or the wrong collection and stuff, I know I'm very slow at buying my little sticker thing, because our garden, we only use it about 5 times a year, the bin when we get it. But I know from when there was a slight hiccup in my getting my sticker, they were able to know that I still had paid from the computer on the bin lorry. So they actually knew, and I was just told you could leave it out, and even though I hadn't got the sticker, they would know, and they did. So it was all good. But so I suppose you must have relatively good control of the operation.
Yeah, so the what we call in-cab units are in the cabs, and the drivers pretty much look after those units. That does say that does record which addresses have paid for the bins. Unfortunately, there are often times when signal, like our own mobile, when signal's not there, or if, for example, we've got a vehicle off the road, or something like that happens, or if the bins are in maybe a communal area and it's really difficult to see which bin is attributed to which property. So the stickers, to be honest, are a kind of a second test for the drivers, just to make sure that they are emptying those bins from properties that have actually paid for the service.
And just one final thing, considering what Councillor Butler said about people actually being unhappy that they're not getting more collection. I mean, is there any scope within the new figures for a couple of extra days, which in turn would obviously change the message, because we're not only just putting up the price, but we're giving 2 more collection days or whatever.
So the cost is the cost, and the charge covers the cost of delivering the service. And if we were to add additional days on, either within the current collection period or at the end, or indeed earlier, as we seem to be getting, the climate seems to be changing, then that's an additional cost. And if we were to do that, we would need to come back and revise the subscription charge again. Having said that, we're always looking to see how we can improve services, and what's been interesting across the partnership is that each council collects it in a slightly different way. So it's a good opportunity to look at how each service works and review how we deliver those services. So we never stand still, but the first premise is that the cost is covered by that subscription.
Oh, no, I accept that. I'm just wondering whether if we went an extra £5 as well, we could do X number of more collections.
Councillor Austin.
Composting's come on leaps and bounds in the last 10 years, and I'm sure it would help the population of this area to be interested to have more information about it. Where does where do our garden waste bins go? The product of our waste bins go to? I presume they go into large biodigesters, but I'm not quite sure at the moment. Perhaps some of the experts might even tell us now. But I think if we can give the subject some publicity, say in February time, it will help the economics of it, as well as improve our carbon footprint.
Yeah, perhaps that's a question for another day, really, because it's probably a little bit off the beaten track to what we're talking about tonight. But it's a good point, Councillor Austin. Thank you. Anybody else got anything further to add?
Be very brief, just to let you know that on your empty the calendar that tells you when you're going to empty your bin, that's online. I'm going to have my brown bin emptied on the 4th of December, but I don't think I am I?
We've literally just had a conversation about that, David. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a recommendation that the Environment and Performance Committee recommend to Cabinet that Cabinet approved the increase in garden waste fees to £50 for the first bin and £30 for the subsequent bins with effect from the 1st of January. Who would like to move the recommendation? Councillor Gleeson, seconded by Councillor Austin. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All in favour?
All in favour? We happy? Yeah, thank you. The last item of business is the work programme on page 13. Christian, have you got anything to add to this? I'm conscious it's only a couple of weeks since we last sat, and we will be sitting again for the meeting on the 19th of December.
No, Madam Chairman, I think all information's there in the report, so I've nothing more to add. Thank you.
Thank you. So, thank you all for attending tonight, and